Yes, I have a question concerning representation, and particularly visual representation, and I sort of wondered, you seem sort of bothered by the fact that the critical zone, or it can't be represented, or it hasn't been represented, and you showed your image of your artist friend with that image on the floor that no one can see. And I would sort of like to just think for a minute about this whole idea of, are we really unable to describe where we live? Or, is it not being done in many different ways, in the arts, by different cultures, in different ways, in different contexts? And sort of probably a sort of slight bothering, is there some kind of universalism in there? That we sort of try to boil it all down to one representation that will stand and hold in all places. So I just wondered if you could expand a bit on this sort of issue which you talked about quite a lot, about trying to represent this critical zone, of coming up with some.
No, you're perfectly right. There would be actually the demand for the first attractor, which is if you abandon modernity, let us have our ethnical background of all, which is the Polish, French, German, English scream for the last year. It might change quickly because of, even in England, because of the discovery that ethnicity is not that way to protect yourself. But this is the demand for simple representation of where we live. I agree. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for something which might modify the notion that when we emancipate ourselves, where do we go? When we realize we won't be emancipated because we will be left inside the situation, which memorably Harvey called staying in the trouble, where are we? And I'm just asking a question then, in both situations we are in a different cosmological, cosmogram situation. Because when you are on Earth, on the planet Earth, seeing the planet Earth from above, you can always imagine you will get out of it. And there are people actually, the accelerationists, to say, let's go as fast as possible out of it. When you are in another cosmological representation, you are inside, you cannot get out. And if you cannot get out, then wisdom might come with you. You will not get out. And massively, I mean not in a room like this, but massively, our Westerner contemporary think they can get out. Human will always find solutions.
Which leads me to suggest that we flatter Mr. Trump's ego and suggest that he should be the first person to land on Mars and thus resolve the problem.
Some qualities should be recognized by Mr. Trump, because he declared war. No one dared do that. Before ecology was bathed in good sentiment, he said, it's a war and peace question. It's banana, can't be that.
Thanks. Yeah, you said you didn't want to get drawn into the politics, James Lovelock's politics, but I was reminded as you were speaking, I think it's Nietzsche said that the human is the cancer on the skin of the earth. I think Lovelock also.
Yes. Human Gaia will do this and human disappear.
Yeah, exactly. So, because there is a politics that informed, Lovelock wasn't a great Democrat, but you turn to another side of politics in terms of friend-enemy. Schmidt, also not known as a great Democrat either.
Well, Schmidt is different. I use Schmidt.
Yeah, but what role for democracy then?
Don't ask Lovelock about this. Terrible.
I'm asking you.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
No, Lovelock is terrible. Well, the democracy is, as you know, something about non-human, for which we are even less able. But fortunately, we have an extraordinary treasury of anthropology to begin to be more intelligent about what it is to talk and represent forests and people, etc., with the difficulty of who represent what. A big question so the question of democracy will be reopened once precisely we abandon the idea of representing human only. But for that, you need to know where you are. Someone very, in one of the talks, very nicely said that when you are a farmer, you also represent and talk about soil health. So there's immediately the sort of distance between, the two circles. I'm representing my own interest and that of the soil. The point that we know that in practices that we have enormous difficulty having a political system representing it. I have some ideas of how to do it better. if we talk about democracy, we have to represent a humanity somewhere. Frankly, this is also the theme of Schmidt, not much of the earth. So, an old reactionary can give you good ideas about what democracy is.
You clarified quite a lot for me, actually, and also now.
Can you speak up, sir?
You clarified a lot for me, so thank you very much. And but also many other issues that I'll probably be grappling with over the coming years, and I can't get to now. But the first thing that came to mind. Am I speaking too low?
Yeah.
Sorry. The first thing that came to mind is when you were showing the axis was the other part that does not get spoken about enough, and that is the underbelly of that axis. In the 1980s, Ward Churchill, for example, had a really interesting edited volume regarding left and right, and making the point of not just him, but many other writers, that left and right actually is not the problem. It's both left and right that's a problem for Native Americans. It still is, because both of them are genocidal and have been and continue to be in one way or another. Where I'm living, the Haudenosaunee might already have a third attractor, and that would be called Kalahari. That's one. In Val di Susa, I think, would be another source. In Rojava, there's another. The Zapatistas also had a third attractor, I think. Or maybe what could look like a third attractor. Or another way to ask, I guess, is could one maybe re-envision, at least for some parts of the world, instead of Gaia, why not Pachamama?
Pachamama is one of the great innovations on the South American, because they managed to put it in the Constitution. I don't see I don't think it would be really useful to have Gaia in the Constitution, but Gaia as a as a sort of political, it's a political body, because it's so secular, it's a political body, it convoke. That's the whole argument that I made on Gaia, but in spite of the terrible level of politics, it has an interesting feature that it weighs on the other, it weighs on nations in a way which is interesting. But the question of the left you mentioned before, I think is the key issue, which is why is it that the notion of social classes has not metamorphosed and translated into the question of ecological injustice? And there's the missing moment, maybe you dated it some other places than that, but I would do, where the left abandoned, or the failure of the ecological movement to take up the task of the socialists, which would have imagined something like what I call geosocial classes, that is a war, a class war, a geosocial class war, and so on, was missed. And it's actually very interesting to see the universal disappearance of green movement. Even in France, they don't even have one single, I think, deputy this time at the last station, maybe one. So it's interesting that the missing opportunity of shifting, Polanyi, of course, has a very nice take on that. The missing transformation of a socialist movement into a socio-ecological movement is probably the most interesting phenomenon to explain historically. And the disappearance of ecology as a movement is not necessarily bad for that. Because certainly there are people like Moore talking about capitalism. There is a return, back to the notion of commons, back to the notion of, there is a turn. Again, it's the same phenomenon as this meeting. Everyone looks where to land. So suddenly we realize that class war and position in ecology war is the same thing. The one I was shocking Anna yesterday because I articulated that one who did that best was actually Pope Francis in Laudato Si, who simultaneously made an amazing text to say that the crying, the scream of the poor and the scream of the earth, want to say scream. But it's not made.
It wasn't that bit that was shocking. The idea that I should collaborate with the Catholics was shocking.
No, I was shocked to read Laudato Si. says how Gabriel or Satanas.
If I may add to that, there are Catholic movements like the Catholic Worker, for example, and of course liberation theologies with whom one could work towards a different end.
I have read that, I have put myself and then you, but I will leave alone.
Well, I guess I was wondering about the newness of the problem that you're talking about.
Please.
Oh, I'll also speak up. I guess I find myself wondering about the newness of the problem that you're discussing, and I thought Liz's point was interesting, thinking about stability and then our projections about, I'm going to say that unknown Earth or the Anthropocene as being an unstable place in which we need to be flexible and resilient, which things are always changing. I think many of us are reflecting the fact that our assumption of stability has been wrong, that in the past we've assumed a stability about the world that it actually hasn't had, and that we're moving into a situation which is also unstable, but we're coming to see that the Earth of the past was an unknown Earth in a way that is unstabilized. But in some ways, in reference to your own work, I think about the other, the previous, the old rural fascist oil, for lack of a better term, and the world is flat kind of world of modernization, and thinking, well, we have never been able to live in, that none of those sites were actually sites in which we could visualize and earn for ourselves as a people and then land on them. And those have always been false futures that were unknown. And it brings me back to Levi's question, which, and I think, which speaks to kind of Donna Haraway's point when Christina was talking about this earlier around the problem of the God trip, the problem of trying to visualize the Earth in its totality, and the essential failure of the problematic of that just as an exercise. And in some ways, I agree with you that we need like a metaphor, a binding, Nicholas' work of a mythos that we can orient ourselves around, and then, but the fundamental problematic of that, I mean, we can speak to the question come up again, of, well, who's the we, and what are the dangers of that project?
The which project?
The project of a singular mythos, because. Or for you, the question I would ask, do you see an alternative to a singular mythos? Can you imagine something from which we could operate politically?
Singular mythos.
So do you see that there could be an alternative to a singular mythos, a singular vision of the Earth? Could we
singular landing place?
A singular landing place. Would it be possible to have a politics that didn't stem from one imagined?
We don't want one. We want to be able to have weapons against the one which is the one dominating the hegemonic argument of modernity. And after that, we don't need an alternative. Anna Tsing, very nice talk. She was asked the same question by someone who said, well, who would be the successor at the time of the Anthropocene? Question she didn't like Anthropocene either. Who will replace the proletariat as an agent of history? And Anna said something which I agree with. I said, maybe it's time we don't have a successor of any agent of history. And I think that's a very deep answer. But your first part of the question is very important, which is, of course, the feminist studies would say that the man has never been well described in the first place. What has changed is that now we might have allies to reopen this question, which is much larger and in many very different, including inside the sciences themselves. And that's a dispute inside the sciences which I find so interesting to sort of push them. But of course, the Earth has never been well described for most of people. So it's not a new phenomenon in that sense. What is new is, of course, the perfect storm and the fact that it's the Earth system itself which is changing. And that gives you lots of allies to really certainly talk about alternatives.
So what you were saying is that we need to understand the hegemonic model of Earth that's emerging so that people from many different positions can engage a hegemonic model? Like, are you saying we need to understand the negative model, or that we need to construct a positive model for which we work?
Well, I'm of both minds on that.
Okay, just to clarify.
That's why I'm interested in the artists. I think we need as many different artists. But see, I love Donna Haraway, but when she presents Mother's Earth images, the art is horrible and terrible. Terribly bad Earth.
Well, that is so subjective.
So, no, I can't show it. I don't believe in subjectivity in art. No, it's really terrible. So it's why we need
Who has done this number? We could call it.
Really? Well, I
Can
said
I-
it over.
I think it's fine.
What did you say?
No,
she
said
said
I
no.
think Donna knows very well what to think about that. I have myself, I have Levi, I have Nicola and Christine, and before I forget, in the midst of passing my question. So that, oh, Christina. So I concur with a lot of the questions that you are getting from these ideas of what's the we and what do we do with the non-waste, etc. And the other ways but let's say I go with, or we go where I go at least now for this moment, which I don't. I try to go with your idea that we need another narrative to counter the project of modernity, and I know that that's a long-term project of yours. I understand that your program that you have given us so many tools to discuss. So even with that, I will cite one of my favorite feminists, the black feminist Audre Lorde, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And I wonder if, just two examples of the tools you propose as one is,
You mean almost dead white men like me?
no, me either. I also use the master's tools, so this is not about purity, it's about questioning, do we use, again, for instance, just a little example that is maybe the less controversial, but you propose us a new image, a vision, so everything in representation should like you say we are going to look for something that we can see. So it's like knowledge and attachment, and we'll pass through. Let's say we want one image, but this has to be an image. Well, in many of the stories we have heard, it's very much about another type of relation with where we land. So there is something else, an image. Even in art, there is a lot of art engagement with putting people in touch, in embodiment. So that's one question I have of one of the tools that might not, that might not fit even for your project of countering something that is very much based on visual presentation, etc. And the other one is, let's imagine we go back to a kind of form of political representation that we thought at least as radical left, we thought it was gone, and with people like Jeremy Corbyn or Bernie Sanders, we think, oh, actually political representation might still do something for us. But this might not be the same as the old parliamentary politics. People are talking about the new politics. So how much even that system of representation and democracy can go back to things that actually maybe you would think it's old tools, like all these old leftists and like people like that. And I don't think the kind of politics you're talking to us might be this kind of new politics. How is this a new politics?
No, in one thing, and everyone has to do what they know how to do. From one to two. Images, I have a slightly different thing, but I also know we have never been modern. So modernity itself is so full of complete contradiction and never alternative, even images, if we say it's modernist because we deal with images, but there are so many regimes of images in modernity, even inside the most classical art form, that I'm less, I see what you see, but I'm less sensitive to the limits, and I prefer to explore the inside, the multiplicity. This is always my take, but the moderns are interesting also anthropologically, because they are so unmodern and they do so many completely crazy things simultaneously. So for me, I see the point. It would be better not to have an image. Yes, okay, many people do that. And actually many artists have find alternative haptic devices to those what you see, etc. But I still use images because scientific papers are mainly made of images. And I'm interested always by pushing inside the sciences their own contradiction. But contradiction should be pushed everywhere. So yes, I see the limit. I didn't say that I think there's no limit.
Levi, sorry, and then Christine, Katie, and Christina.
Shall we go to the ones who have not asked the question?
Yeah, okay, so then it's Christine, Katie, and Christina, and then Nicola and Levi.
We're going to run out of time by then, so I'm just saying.
Well, for we're going to run out of time, can I change the discussion completely? Okay. Because I think Anna, you've done something which is quite extraordinary in the last couple of days in bringing together this group of people, which, I mean, I've certainly had my mind bent in ways I didn't know it could go, and I suspect that a lot of us feel like that, and we've heard language that perhaps we don't always understand or we're not always comfortable with, but I think there's a sense and an energy in everybody about there's something here to take forward. And Stephen this morning and Nicola talked a little bit about IUSS and the activities of Division 4 of IUSS, and I have an involvement in one of the other divisions of IUSS, and as some of you will know, the World Congress of Soil Science will be in Glasgow in 2022, and we were talking this morning about an opportunity to perhaps introduce some of you guys into the World Congress of Soil Science and sort of take this idea forward. I know that's 5 years from now, and there's lots of other things we could do along the way, but I think we just wanted to remove that to you and to everybody as an opportunity which you've actually created by creating this.
And I will embrace it with great enthusiasm. But instead of pushing this notion for now, while we're still in the attentive space, and I was going to actually cut a question that was sort of cross-cutting, and in 5 minutes I have to herd some people out of the room, but before that, I was struck by the difference, by the different statements that we had throughout the days about the role of science, and I know that this is a pet kind of bee in the bonnet for me, so excuse me while I indulge. So Liz talked about the measurement and the shortcomings of measurement in terms of actually informing farmer practice. The farmers shouldn't wait for the science, they should just follow the process, which is already informed by the science, which is complete, which was kind of one argument to take. Then Steve very strongly pushed for the science is absolutely crucial, and we have to know, and we have to know, and we have to model, and it isn't perfect, it's a dog walking on back legs, but we have to have it. And then we have Bruno commenting on Steve as an object of his study, saying that, well, yes, this is all very well, but these models are
The object remains silent so far.
These are models which pretend to be holistic, but are not holistic because they cut out all the things that actually create the disturbance in the first place. So, which brings me to the big question of what is the role for science in this find, whatever we want to call it, the soil care, the finding of a landing place, the new regime that we want to engage with. What's the role for science there? Because it clearly has a role to play, and it has many roles to play, but at the same time it's continues to be entirely contested. So I'm just throwing that into the room as perhaps a simplistic question, but maybe something we could engage with.
But I would want to, as a suggestion, that it's not the role of science, because there's no singular science, and there's only heterogeneity in different sciences and practices. And I don't think there's a role for science, because we might want to engage with certain sciences and certain scientists in certain ways in certain places, and we might not be interested in other sciences as a whole discipline. We're done with it. For instance, it could be the case, or we would want to look at, so I don't know, I would want to maybe just pluralize the science.
Well, you could say that the role
roles.
for science is there by situation.
Well, I mean, my question for Professor Latour was about in the field work, when you come across scientists that have a techno-science fix for where the landing place should be. There's going to be another landing place, and there is a techno-scientific, which we heard in the last presentation quite clearly that we listened to. There's a techno-scientific fix for where we're going to land, and it's going to be universal and for 4 continents, for instance. So, how do you interact with that ethically in your ethnography, or what kind of how to engage back with the scientists that you encounter that are proposing that as the landing place, for instance? Because that would be one of the roles that science imagines for itself in certain scientists and certain sciences, right? In certain places, imagine that as the role, and not others, and not many. I'm not trying to.
Can I just say, I was going to ask, because actually as somebody who's worked on a project which some of your insights were using it, I'm an actual scientist, but we did use some of your insights in our methodology in terms of the way we approached it. And I wanted to ask the question we sort of aligned is how does, it's from the other angle, how does your philosophy contribute to our science to make it do a better job? You know, how does this philosophy that you've been talking to about now, you know, where can it make us do what we do better?
Well, I think it's time to quit.
For science or for you?
I don't know how to answer. I mean, the field, I chose this field work precisely because there were people who were trying to get the patchiness of the heterogeneous soil seriously. And I studied before sort of more traditionally biologists or even geologists or even economists who had what you call the techno-scientific indefinite expansion. I'm really interested in the extension of the notion of res extensa. And what is so interesting in these guys, sorry to use you, is that the paradigm itself is built on the idea that what happened in the lab and what happened outside is completely different. And that's why we have to equip. So there is a modesty built in which seems to be really interesting to capture for other things which are exactly as interesting, which is to establish that, like what Eduardo Cohn tried to do, to use his own description of forest thinking to make foresters, to organize foresters encounters, which is what I call the diplomatic turn in anthropology. And I think there are scientists for which I would not even started to do that. But with those guys, I think it's feasible.
It's a tractable problem.
Okay, I like this as a note to finish on because I do need to get Professor Latour and others on taxi to the train station. So thank you again.
Thank you for you.
And also, just because Professor Latour is leaving, this doesn't mean that this is over. I have the whole day. We have the place with wine and refreshments until 5. I'm going to book us for dinner in the evening. So if you feel like staying and continuing the debate in this room, that's great. If you feel like taking it there or to the park, that's fantastic. But don't leave. You're not allowed to leave.
Well, I can say that you are very lucky to be able to stay, and I'm sorry to but tomorrow is my birthday and I go to my family.
Well,
I'm turning 70.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bruno.